Previously we looked at the National NV-M1 video camera, takes VHS tapes, and we also looked at the National NV-M3 video camera, which is an upgraded version that adds autofocus. We then looked at a CCD version of the M3. Now we're going to take a look at the NV-M5, which now this is also a CCD, and they've added HQ video processing to it, which gives the picture a few more lines. And there's a piezo. Now this camera, I can't remember if I've ever turned it on, so perhaps this is a good time to do that. Still takes the same little multi-plug thing, multi-pin thing from the same type of charger power supplies that we saw before, which brings the video and audio output down this cable. So let's plug this in and see what it does. See that previously the batteries were on the M1 and M3 the square type, but now they've changed to a long skinny battery which fits inside the machine. I'm not really sure why they did that, because on the back it's more convenient. You can use different sized batteries, although they were always all around 2 amp hours anyway. Maybe there's something better about these batteries. An older National one and a slightly newer Panasonic one there. The capacity did change a little bit. Originally 12 volt 2 amp hour, now 12 volt 2.3. And a slide in the back. Click. And that was the same type of battery that was used in the much older, or somewhat older, NV-180 and AG-2400, depending on where you were. And that took the same batteries, which were a slightly smaller version of what the NV-180 and the earlier versions of this took. So maybe they wanted to revive this. Not sure if there was a reason for these batteries that appeared for a while. I don't know of this being used on any other cameras than the M1 and the M3. Anyway, all these batteries are ruined now because they're lead acid batteries and those don't last very long. They don't last very long, especially if you leave them discharged. So let's turn this thing on and see what happens. Got a little thing there that might do something. Okay, it's come on. Viewfinder's lit up. It seems quite dark. This is on an auto high-speed shutter. If we turn that off, then it starts looking normal. There's the focus settings. White balance is on auto. And that's pretty much all you get. I think yeah, that works. And power zoom is still working. Picture looks a bit mushy, but not too bad. Let's see. We'll eject. Alright. Put this in and see what happens. We'll put it into play mode. It seems to be running too fast. The capture is not really showing what's actually happening. Something weird's going on. Because to me on the monitor, it's got flickering. Seems like something's not synced up right. Let's just try recording and see what happens. Reset the counter and then record for a bit. You'll make a nice recording of the size of the power monitor there. And this bag of SD cards. And we'll see what it did. Oh, the rewind doesn't work. That might mean that it won't let the tape out either. Okay, it can fast forward. We'll see if we can rewind it while it's playing. Okay, so the playback picture is just as bad as what the pre-recorded tape looked like. So there you go. Anyway, will it give the tape back? Oh, no. Oh, that's a shame. It looks like we won't get the tape back. Okay, after rebooting it, maybe. Anyway, let's take this apart. Well, actually, from the magic of buying two of them, I don't need to take this one apart. And the other one has already been taken apart because I did that in a live stream some weeks or months ago. So we'll watch that video, and then after that we'll have a little look at what we found when taking it apart. Let's take apart this M5 so we can see what's in it and compare it to the M3. I've never taken one of these apart before. That's quite dodgy. It's got some badly corroding batteries in there. Maybe that's why that screw's all rusted. I might just leave that covered up and hope that the crust that's in there hasn't wrecked too many other things. That's a shame. I really don't want to get that stuff on your fingers. And so the M3 cameras I've taken apart many times before because I've owned those since the late 90s, but I only got this M5 recently to try and complete my set, and so I've not taken one apart before. Yeah, so because I haven't taken one of these apart before, I'm just going to take out all the screws I can see, and then we'll see what becomes loose. Looks like it's already coming apart. This camera is a pretty beat up one. Hasn't not been looked after. When I received it, it was completely covered in dust. It was really dirty, and I spent quite a while cleaning it up to this standard. Yeah, so the viewfinder comes off when you push this little thing in, which pushes that clip in, which lets it slide past the end there on the bracket. And I don't know if we need to take this off, but it looks like if you undo that screw, a sheet will slide back, and then it probably reveals some more screws. I think it's coming off. For some reason there's some sticky tape on the back there that's holding it together. Oh, look at that! That's where the battery goes. So these side controls stay attached to the side. I don't know, do I unplug all those wires or do I just unscrew the board that they all go to? So I want to leave it mostly connected together in once it's apart so that we don't lose track of where everything connects to. That probably means the bottoms are going to fall out. They are attached, but all those slide switches there, you'd have to get those in the right position when putting them back, otherwise it won't, the little slot in there won't be sitting over the lever of the switch. So that's a trick you gotta watch for when putting things back together. Something down here is still holding it together. Maybe we have to take the camera part out. I see there's some red screws there and there. Usually it's the red coloured screws that you undo for access when servicing it. Standard national Panasonic procedures to undo the red coloured screws to get access to things for servicing. Oh, there's some more screws here. Oh, there's screws down these holes. Yeah, I can't see directly over things because of the where the camera is up here. Oh, here we go. Come off, but still see done. Oh, that's a bad design, isn't it? You gotta. There's wires there that are going over to these controls that you must have to undo first. Now the length is okay, not that bad. So that's not attached very much. The whole camera part is a separate thing there, and Looks like it's just attached by a small amount. Unplug some things to make this a bit tidier. The corrosion from the battery has gone all the way down the wires and contaminated the plugs. There's green juicy stuff there. Okay, I'm going to disconnect the camera part from the VCR part. So in the M3 camera there was just one cable that joined the camera over, and plus there's a few little bits that go to those controls. So maybe that's this here, because that looks like it goes to the viewfinder, and that I think is a grounding wire only, and then there's a little bit that goes to these controls. Okay, so that's metal bracket is attached to the camera part with some screws. Oh, they're loose. I wonder if they've shaken loose or if someone's already been in here before and not done it up properly. I noticed there was a screw missing on the bottom to that hole, I think. Oh, we didn't even turn this camera on first. I guess we should have done that. Yeah, so that's the connector where the viewfinder goes. Yeah, this camera will be late 80s or early 90s. Not sure exactly. The previous model is 85-ish. There's this one with CCD. And now I'm going to strip that screw out. Even though I'm pretty sure I've got the right screwdriver. Okay, it's really tight. And so I wonder if that's a bit of an afterthought, that this grounding wire here, you can't separate it easily because it's soldered on at both sides. That's a bit unusual. It seems like that's a tack-on or modification rather than something that was there in the original design. Oh, it's an update to the design. So that's a little sensor there which is used for white balance. Camera. Okay, I might cut that wire off. Or maybe I can get it off with this bracket. Oh yeah, strange. I don't know what the idea of that little bracket is. It's not holding things in, but maybe it's some sort of strategic shielding to meet some compliance or to get some interference to go away. Now the VCR part. Interesting to see how much that's changed from the previous model. Might be very similar. I've got a fully torn down one from an M3 machine here. Things look pretty similar if the loading mechanism was removed, which you can remove by the red screws there. See if this top part comes off. Not sure what the handle goes into. Oh, it will be into the frame, won't it? And maybe it won't come off that easily. And tripod mount on the bottom there. I want to see what's under this battery holder. I'm not sure what else is holding it down. There are clips there. Maybe this board will fold out. Oh, but there's board-to-board connectors there. So that would have to pull out first. And maybe that has to lift off. Yes, the controls board has to lift off. Doesn't want to do that yet. And now I've messed that up a bit. The board with the controls on it is still... Oh well, we're taking that out anyway. Yeah, so that board folds down. I only wrecked it a little bit. You can't see what's holding this on. It seems to be separate to the handle. But there's nothing obvious here holding it in. There must be something that comes off of this. Ah, under there, there's another red screw, I think, for the battery part. And this might not be going back together, but that's okay because I've got two of them. This one is for taking apart and experimenting with. Looks like all sorts of stuff has to come off before the battery thing will come off. There's wires going along there that are hooked into plastic clips. Oh, that's the battery connection and the battery backup thing. Doesn't want to budge. That's where the power connects in, but it's also a video input and output. I see. There's a post in there which has all the wires tucked behind it. And we can unplug that. And the battery connection goes onto there. Now the next problem is this hinged part of this board is connected onto the battery housing. I think we can do by squeezing in the tops of the clips. Not that easy. Oh yeah, it did get unclipped. The other one is surrounded by a lot of components. Now, they don't expect you to take these off normally. So you just hinge it out, do whatever maintenance work you need, then put it back. I suppose I could have got a service manual and looked at the instructions on how to take it all apart, but then where's the fun in that? Okay, apart from one ground wire, which we're going to have to cut off. There you go, battery holder is now out of the way. There's a releasing mechanism in there which pulls that hook in. Now we can look at the other part of the back of the mechanism. So it looks pretty similar to the M3 one with the loading motor there with a belt. And then the capstan motor there, also with a belt. Those belts go bad and then the machine won't work properly. It looks pretty much exactly the same. The bottom of the head drum there with the motor and the ribbon cable coming out of it. Although the ribbon cable is different. No, I think it's the same, it just has a curve in it there, whereas it's straight here. And then the signals coming off the head are on the shielded wire, which go up into there, which would be the head amplifier. The mode switch there, as the mechanism goes into different modes, that switch moves along to tell it what mode it is in or has reached. So that's the same, and the mounting of that board is the same, but here they got a flexible ribbon connector which goes off to the control board, but here it's a discrete wired header rather than a flex like that. Interesting that they changed, because the M1 that had discrete wired, so it came from down here somewhere. So I've kind of gone back to that. It's a little bit different though, it doesn't have those. So that one there is for the end sensor LED, which shines out inside the tape to detect the ends when the clear leader appears. So it has that one, but the other one there is a dew sensor for detecting if condensation is forming, which will happen if you bring this in to a warm from a cold outdoor place or between hot and cold rooms. Then condensation can form inside the machine and you can't use it if it's got condensation on it because the tape will stick to the head, which is quite bad because you end up chewing up the tape. So there's a little sensor which detects humidity, the resistance changes with humidity. So there's a sensor there, which this one doesn't seem to have. They must have moved it. But there's also another one up on the tape door. So I think that will trigger first, because if you open the door environment, it's going to cause condensation. So it's on the other side of that. Maybe they decided that that's the only one they need. Okay, should we turn it on? Seems like a good thing to do. Oh, we can't unless that's put back. Yeah, I still want to know how to get this top board off. Oh, maybe it's part of that bracket there, which has red screws. I thought that was only for the loading mechanism, but it looks like it does more than just the loading mechanism. Putting my fingers in grease. I'm going to undo some screws that aren't red. Let's see what happens. Moving this little door over the controls chooses whether it's in record mode or not. And I saw under there when I prized it up, there's a little switch there that will detect the position of that door. Oh yeah, look, it's coming off now. There's another screw from the top, I think. Oh, it was just clipped. Ah, that there is the write protect switch. We knock out the tab in the back edge of the tape to prevent accidental erasing. That looks like the wire is attached, so we'll just remove the switch. There you go, so that's how the handle comes off. A bunch of screws along the top edge of the mechanism. Still don't know how to get that board out of there. Yeah, what I want to do is turn this on, but we can't really do that without these controls. I want to get the board out so we don't have this extra mess hanging around. Oh, it slides off, look at that. Okay, the handle pulls forward and then it unclips. Ah, that's probably a key part of dismantling this thing. Yeah, so there's a groove in there that slides into. So it's simple when you know how. Then that just comes off. And see, that even reveals a little plug so you can disconnect the erase prevention tab thing. And then we can get that board out and plug it in back onto here. And now let's see if we can turn this on. So we've got a power supply connected up. We're going to pretend that none of this stuff is touching and plug it in, and then we'll see what happens. Anyway, where's the power switch? Where was the power switch? So it's a lever. That's here. Yes. Oh look, you can see it. Wow. Why is that resized to a weird little shape? Look at that. Why has it gone to that funny shape? Look at that. The camera is being a camera, more or less. It's a bit crusty looking, but the camera looking at a camera. There's too much light up there. Yeah, that's sad. It doesn't want to eject. Have I unplugged something that's important? There you go, manually eject it then. Ah, yeah, I should have probably tested it before dismantling it, shouldn't I? But maybe this was the one that didn't work. I had briefly turned on the two M5 cameras that I had, and yeah, one of them was not happy at all, so I think that's this one. Yeah, so I guess we can't really test it much further than that, because I think the mechanism is dead for some reason. It refuses to turn on, turn off. It makes a little bit of noise when the power turns on, sometimes. It's not going to do it now. Something important short out. Yeah, because the power supply has turned off now. So maybe... Oh, did the fuse touch the... That's possible, isn't it? If the fuse touched that metal, that might have killed the power supply. Oh no, it's come back. I think it just... You have to turn it off to reset it. Yeah, I think that fuse must have touched. Seems less accessible than the other models. Yes, so there you go. The mechanism makes a small movement when you power the camera up, but that's it. I was thinking, what if we force a tape into it? Is that a good idea? How much do I want to destroy a tape? And now you see there's a light flashing, which means usually there's a problem, so... Oh no, look at that. Whoa. Is the tape moving? Yeah. Something gets squished though at the last minute. Probably should have cleaned the rollers and things. The head looks pretty dirty on it. It makes a squelching sound and then... Oh, it's nearly there. The problem I got is I've got to hold this little switch in, although you can't see that from here. If we had a more forgiving screen, we might be able to get away with it. Yeah, it's sticking up the top of the head. Oh, it's the back tension band which is making the noise. So there's a lever there which the tape rests on, which restricts how easily it can unwind to keep a constant tension around the head. So if I release that, which means the tape will go slack on the head, but stops making that squeaking noise. It seems like the only thing this can't do is eject. Does that mean the eject button is broken? Because all the other playback functions seem to more or less work. Wondering if we should try cleaning the head. That might wake it up a bit. We have a piece of paper. Clean the video heads. You need a clean bit of paper. I don't know if that counts as clean. This is pretty much a throwaway machine. That there's a few marks on the head. You get isopropyl alcohol on a clean bit of paper. Hold that against the side of the head and rotate. Yeah, it's got some sticky stuff on that. There's something really bad on the head there. Yeah, don't take this as a good example of how to clean the video heads because I'm being a bit rough here. It seems like it's got residue from sellotape or something on it. Maybe it's corrosion. Post-it notes to clean the video head. Not really the recommended thing, but there you go. But clean paper you use usually, and you turn the head anti-clockwise and you see a little bit of dark stuff coming off. But there's something really stubborn on there. There's also a black line around it. A dark line there, which shouldn't be there. Although it's had a hard life for some reason. No, what exactly? If you're not careful when doing this, you can snap off the video heads. So hopefully we haven't done that. That's why you just hold the paper still and rotate the head. Don't move the paper around because that could break off the little video heads. It's getting there. Let's try it out and just make sure it's dried before you start it up again. Otherwise the tape will end up sticking onto the head, and yeah, it doesn't like doing that very much. Better. Well, in the viewfinder you can see the picture, although it's got lines through it, so I think there's some sync or some other thing is messed up. And if we had an analog monitor here, we could probably get a better picture, but yeah, that's being converted with this thing, a retro scaler, and it has different modes. We'll see if that makes any difference. Yeah, that's had enough. Oh, it might have been that my finger stopped pushing on the switch. I'm adjusting the tracking control to see if there's a point where it will lock on. Sounds like it's chewing the tape off a bit too. Oh yeah, it is. I think one of the tape guides is no good there. It's chewing up the top edge of the tape. Yeah, it's not a good idea to touch the tape while the machine's running. And that means once it's gone through, this tape's wrecked because it's chewing the top edge of it. I think it's that roller down the back that I can't see. I think needs to be lifted up a bit. There's all sorts of adjustment procedures and jigs for doing that alignment work, which I've never done before. Oh look, if you pause it, it works. Yeah, you see there's these lines on it as well. Not sure exactly what's causing those. Anyway, this is chewing up my tape. So I used the eject button to stop it, but still won't do the eject. Does that suggest the mode switch is had it, so it doesn't realize that there's a tape in there? Oh, I see. So the reason why the record light flashes when you put it into record mode will be because we pulled off the erase prevention switch. Yeah, so if that was connected, it probably would jump into record mode right now. And when I push the little switch that is this for sliding this cover onto playback mode, it stops flashing, and then you can use the play control. Oh no, I didn't push eject, I pushed stop. Yeah, eject does nothing. And so maybe it's just the eject button that's dud. Let's get a tool to short the contacts of the eject switch. Let's see what happens. There you go. So the problem is the eject button is not working for whatever reason. That's bizarre, isn't it? So that there must have had a hard life, that little button, and been damaged. It's just a little push button thing. Maybe someone was really rough with it. Yeah, it does not work. Yet if you're short across the contacts of it, it ejects fine. Alright, there you go. Okay, here are the bits that we got out of that M5 that we took apart. And we'll have a look at it. I want to take this apart. We have already, when we looked at the alternate version of the M3 that used a CCD sensor, we did see some similar stuff to this because it had the piezo autofocus thing, which I think is in there. So we should take that apart, this whole thing apart, and see it, look at it, investigate it. And then we got the mechanism. I was thinking, is this simpler or less boards than the M3 camera? We've got the M3 bits over here, so the mechanism it's very similar, but the board on it is different. See, it's got the video circuit here as a separate unit, which we borrowed the bracket off to fix the other machine. And then it's got the audio stuff here, and then it's got, oh, I forgot what the other thing is. It was at the head amp there, I think. The thing that does the switching between the 4 little pickups on the head. I think that's what that was. Yeah, then the output video signal from that on this cable goes into here, which is the rest of the video circuit. Yeah, so audio, video, and then on the back there's the single board that has got on it the servo system control, servo there, system control area here, and then the power section here, where and with that regulator chip that we replaced on the other one, which mysteriously burnt out, and then there's the fuse and power distribution thing, that main connector, and then we got the M5 version of it, which still we found just one cable that goes between the camera section and the VCR section, but there's this extra bit on here, which I wonder, is that the exact same thing as what we had here, where the power switch and standby and LEDs are on their own little board, but here, are they built into this? That looks very similar. I don't think so, because the power switch isn't there on this one, is it? It's over here. It's that little thing. I think that's just a red herring. Although it's pretty similar because the standby button is there. I think that button is wrecked. Feels weird. Anyway, let's separate these bits out. Oh, that goes all the way over to the other side there. And then the main camera connector. So that's separated the camera. Now, in this machine, there are no other boards involved in the mechanism other than a few little minor things, which is similarly a fuse with the input connector fuse. There's the microphone and remote pause on a little board. And then there's another little board here, which looks like that's got the audio circuit on it. You can see the wires coming off the audio control head go onto there. So that must be the whole audio section. Let's see, that's the microphone wire there. Sure, that's what joined onto the microphone. And does that go all the way around? It does, look, it comes up to there. So I think that's all the audio circuit for the whole system. And the head, which is in pretty bad shape. You can see there's a line all around it, and then there's these spots on it, which I was kind of trying to clean off in the other video on the stream. But yeah, I think this head is worn out. Yeah, there's no protrusion. Yeah, so that's a bit worn. Yeah, so other than that, having active circuitry on it, the only other board is this one here at the back. And you can see the motor cables to the video head, and then the signal cables shielded. They go into this box. That must do the same job as what's in the little box here in the M3. So it's all on there, and that's the rest of the video stuff. Wouldn't be surprised if it's the same circuit that was used on the M3. They've just moved it. Instead of being on its own board, it's now integrated into here. I have another set of those boards, and that has the audio stuff on it. And then that bit, which was the head switching board, joins onto that one, because those hybrid module things look very similar, and then the two different delay lines, and then those thingies. So I was wondering, does it still have that as the motor drive? Perhaps not. That one's got a different one than AN3821, whereas that was a BA643. So that's different there. And then got that thing. It might be another motor driver. Yes, there are a few little differences there. Maybe they improved something. Yes, let's look in this and see if it's got a similar thing to that. I think it's just an analog switch. Multi-channel analog switch. Yeah, it is the same thing. So yeah, I think that circuit is the same. Interesting. And then in terms of the mechanism, we already studied that and determined that it was more or less the same with a few minor changes on it here and there. Is good. Why change something that is good and works? Seems like the cassette loading mechanism is simplified a bit now. Or is it just because I took some parts off? Now the moving part in there is different. It's missing that stuff. So the soft eject wheel thing, which is here, that's now moved down to the side of it. Maybe it doesn't exist. Oh no, it's down there, coupled through that gear and that little arm. Okay, good to see the differences and similarities between these. Now let's take a look inside under these boards to see what the camera involves. I've got the service manual here for the M5 and was going to look at some parts, but I don't know if there's really much interesting in it. Let's get into this and we'll see if that gives us anything interesting. I don't know where to even start on this. I'll take this bracket off first. I don't really mind if this one doesn't go back together because we've got the other one to keep as part of the collection. So we'll use this one just for investigating and documenting something there, which is probably a power supply sectioned off in its own metal box. And I think we've got to get that whole board off before we can see that. So that white balance sensor there, it's got a flex cable coming off of it, which goes all the way around and plugs into their little light sensor thing. And then there's a 2x3 connector there, board to board, which plugged onto there. And then there's another one there going down to this other board on the other side. It's got this interesting shielding plate on the back of it. Look, and then there's some sensing there about where you're zooming and focusing. Some little flex board, and then there's some reflective strips there. Okay, so that can tell when it reaches the extents, because two sensors, and that will change from only that one lit and not that one to the opposite at the other end, so it can monitor the extents of the focus. And then similar for the zoom, although it only seems to know roughly where it's in the center in that case, because those edges are longer. It's a bit more involved than that, it seems. Screw or a clip or something. It goes over to here. If that means we must get those motors out of the way first. Anyway, let's try the boards instead. Okay, there's another screw to release that shielded box, is it? Oh, look at that. The sensor's right there. Oh, so that means that box there isn't power supply stuff. That is the CCD driving and signal amplifying stuff in the little box. There's two boards packed in there. And if that shielded one is the video signal coming off, it would be digital or not by that stage. Suppose we could look in the service manual, couldn't we? Little thing there. The cable tie that's holding that stuff together. There's an inline plug in there. Why? Maybe there's not enough room for it to have a plug at that end. So we put it in the wire so you can separate these boards. Oh, there's corrosion in this stuff. I wonder if that battery, really bad battery, has leaked and it's got into these. Yeah, that's a shame, isn't it? I don't know if we'll be able to remember where to pull this stuff back. Let's unplug everything while we're here. It's got some big chips on it, some bodges. I think they might be just links that are planned, indicated by the silk screen. Then that stuff looks a bit more bodged. Extra parts in there, some diode and resistor, another resistor. Let's see what happens under this. Oh, that doesn't take the sensor off, it's just that ring. Okay. Oh, the piezo thing has got the sensor mounted on it. Ah. So it's really a back focus adjustment via the piezo element. So that's different to what we saw in the other camera, the M3 with the CCD, where the piezo element had a lens in the middle of it, and it wasn't the sensor that was being moved. And so it's the whole sensor and that IR filter that can move in and out by a small amount, and that was powered by that. Went this somewhere. Something that's fairly grunty. Maybe there's a power supply thing in there. Oh, this part here has been screwed in, and then something's been poked in there to damage the threads. That's what it looks like. It's been melted slightly, I think, to stop that from being able to unscrew. Oh, that's a shame. And you can see a small bit of fungusy stuff starting to grow across that IR filter glass. So this one's in remarkably good condition, because usually you find that all crusted over and that messes up the picture from the camera. But this one's in very good condition, except for that little thing just starting to grow on it. And I think they're pretty much wrecked once that started, because you can't stop. Oh, it seemed to have cleaned off. Okay, maybe it wasn't too far gone. You can see there the movement of it flexing the piezo disc. Now, as for putting this back together, I don't even know which way around that went. I don't know which screws were which. Alright. But yeah, that has to go on there first, because these three are underneath this metal plate. I still want to look at those things. Still want to look at these sensors to see what they look like. But this stuff is covered by these motors. Oh, I see. There's a row of screws down there. Zoom, power zoom, and then focus. Then that comes off. It's got little IR emitters and receivers, pairs of them. So it's a four-legged device, and there's two next to each other there. That's how it does the sensing of the position from these reflective strips. There's a little bit of processing stuff there that's by itself. Maybe that didn't fit on that board, so they had to make a sub board and screw it there. Pretty weird. That doesn't seem to go into the lens in any way. Just some little filter inductory thing, I think. And it's going bad. Presumably that's from the battery that was leaking in the bottom of the case. It dripped on it. It's all pretty dirty in this thing. All the dust has been coming out as I take it apart. Oh, look at that. There's capacitors up on stalks. Like tantalum capacitors. So that when they explode it doesn't catch fire to everything, maybe? Must have just been not enough room. Yeah, same deal with mounting that thing up there. Not enough room to have it on this board. Already busy with other stuff. So that's a double-sided through-hole plated board. Rare in this type of stuff. Well, less rare in cameras, but other equipment of this age generally doesn't have that type of circuit board. Yeah, it's a different type of through-hole plating though. You can see it's got a white ring of stuff around it. So that's some kind of protection thing. Some of them don't have it. Maybe that's how they tinted it back then with different stuff, just the top overlay stuff rather than the solder mask. And I thought it was interesting that they're putting the silkscreen between the legs of devices, I think to help avoid solder bridges from the wave or dip soldering, whatever they do to these. Alright, I think we looked at enough stuff in this. We'll take a look in the service manual. Let's see. So it goes through taking it apart. Maybe we should have read that. And you're getting this business off. That end cap thing. That board. Oh, that looks like the viewfinder. Okay, that's how to take apart the viewfinder. Taking the deflection coils off of it. Placing the CCD, zoom motors, focus motors. Placement of the cylinder, the video head. Placing the upper cylinder. Capstan stator unit. There with the coils on it. Dust seals, thrust bearing, thrust adjuster. How to set the height correctly. Back tension. Cleaning the head. I get this so that you can have the camera section further away. Oh, so that's similar to the one that I have for the M3. So it will be for that. Interesting that there's two unused pins there. How to attach the camera separately. Oh, shining a light. Setting up all that stuff. The special calibration pieces that you need. Fixture. That's how to make it. If you don't want to cut out the last cover page. Oh, I see. So it came in the manual. The last page. The back cover, I guess. And then you can use another one and create it. Wow. So now we get into the drawings. Locations of test points. The autofocus there. CCD drive. Okay, so there's the sensor. And then there's those other bits and pieces. Sensor 2, sensor 1. So was that these things here? That thing there? I think so. Because that says there, IC251 is that one there. Which is what it's talking about there. IC252. Which is on the other side of that board. Okay, so that's parts of that there. So there's the video signal. And then the amps, sample and hold, gain, emitter follower. So then that must come off of this connector here, BA1251. What it says here. So the video signal. I can't even see that stuff. Yeah, that is the pre-video signal they talk about there, coming off the sensor board. So then this sensor 1 PCB must be the next thing down the line. This one here. IC201, yeah, that thing there is this stuff here. Okay, viewfinder, the standard stuff, the video, horizontal drive back. Oh, and then there's the indicators that shine. I think it's just LEDs in there that you can see. Power supply. Yeah, so it looks like we got the same sort of chip that burnt out in the M1. See that there? I think so. Is that thing there? That thing there, perhaps? Shows a transistor array. Then there's some switch mode stuff happening here. Makes 9 volts and 18 volts and minus 8 volts from the 12 volts. System control, the servo, the video signal, luminance and chrominance, the head switching for the different heads, and signal path through all the different bits and pieces. And then we go into schematics rather than block diagrams. That's the thing I wanted to look at. The connector that goes between the camera and the VCR. So it has two non-connected pins. A pin missing there in the middle and then two on the end, but that's kind of different there because that shows presumably there are two missing. Maybe that's something else. Power supplies. Oh, maybe the pinout's different at the other end. Ah, yeah, it is. So they're talking about that's that end of it there, where it's got that stuff that goes out to these capacitors are on that connector and on a different connector. That's a weird mix, isn't it? Okay, so that's what some of that power supply business is there. It's just going to bypass capacitors and that's it. Anyway, so we'll be able to follow that to put the thing back together. PCB layouts for all the camera bits. Oh yeah, the autofocus circuit. Or was that thing with the two huge chips on it? This thing here with two big chips, is that what we're seeing here? IC 603, 602. Looks like it. Okay, so this is all autofocus. Quite a lot of stuff needed just to make an autofocus. Ah, that means it's got the high current thing for the piezo, which is over in the corner down here. High voltage, high current, whatever it is, stays there. Two piezo element and just in parallel, and then a ground. And it's driven through a capacitor there. 250 volt 1 microfarad capacitor. And it looks like it's a 160 volt capacitor here on what I've got. There's also a 250 volt 2.2 microfarad. So where does that come from? This business here. So there's a high voltage power supply with this little inductor or transformer, which it's in that little can. This stuff here in the can, and those bigger capacitors near it, and that's the connector. Okay, so the signal is through here, off here. Oh, I see. There's a push-pull kind of buffer thing there, and then the signal must be this one here, which comes from some circuit that's telling you what to do. Ah, digital to analog converter. Okay. So some variable voltage will be coming out of there, and then that gets amplified up to a fairly high voltage from this power supply rectifier smoothing capacitor there. There'll be a fairly high voltage on that point that then gets proportionally applied to the piezo disc through that transistor, and then current drawn off of it through this transistor. So there's a push-pull type thing, like a little audio amplifier circuit. And then there's some biasing adjustments. So that's powered from this, and then switched through that. So whatever that there goes to will be some kind of power supply switching circuit. If there's any feedback on that voltage, doesn't look like it. It seems pretty open. There's no other. Is that a feedback? No, there's no feedback on what the power supply is doing. Guess it's just a fixed duty cycle thing. I want to see what's driving it. Guess it just comes out of that same chip. Okay, so that's driving the power supply chip there. Along there. VHD, horizontal drive, vertical. Is that vertical? That's the second one in on there. Yeah, it's the, whatever that is. It's one of the horizontal or vertical sync signals from the camera or from the video signal that's used to drive this power supply. So that's just set up to work at that frequency and produce the relevant voltage. Some couple of hundred volts by the look of it on that cap there, 250 volt 2.2 microfarad capacitor. So that's good. That's interesting to see. There's PCBs, sensor. Okay, that's the little boards to do with the CCD, the viewfinder schematic, high voltage stuff going on there. That's a very similar power supply there in the viewfinder to make the high voltage for the tube. So that's got a power supply there, so it's 5 volts, comes in through the coil, transistor that pulls it down, transistor driver, buffer, and then that's off the horizontal drive signal. So what direction is that? Oh, so they come back. So the composite signal, which will go to this decoder chip, and then that separates out the horizontal and vertical sync signals. Is that V? Oh, that's the signal that goes to the deflection coils there. And the horizontal drive and vertical drive come out of that separator chip, and then those get used buy the video camera section and also get used there to drive the high voltage power supply. So it means if there isn't a valid video signal going into the viewfinder, it won't turn on this stuff because it uses the video signal to drive the power supply circuits. The power supply, the transistor array that provides the different voltages, and then some switching adapter, switching power supply that we saw earlier in the block diagram, which produces the higher voltages and the negative voltage. The VCR schematic, that will be one of those nice big fold out pages. And we've got the PCB. Luminance, chrominance, and head amp. And then the layout stuff from the main board. Oh, that's just one section, isn't it? The video section of the board. And then I guess they show you the other bits separately. Oh, look at that, they show you the bodge on the schematic there. So that will be some little transistor that's been bodged in somewhere. There's a bunch of stuff bodged in there. That's talking about there. And there's some metal can things leaning on the chip. And there's a bent over capacitor there. Interesting, but I don't see bodged in transistor like what they show there. That goes onto the corner. Maybe it's been integrated into the board on my one. Strange. There you go. Some bits to do with positioning of things, block diagram of connections, exploded views of the mechanical, the other bits of the housing, how to wrap it up for shipping, and the power supply. Yeah, I think we'll cover that in another video because I've got a dead one that we need to have a look at. So I think we're good now. Well, there's the M5 camera, severely taken apart. Yeah, I don't know if I'll put this back together. Depends how I'm feeling at the time. But the exciting news is this is not the end. Because next time we do video cameras like this, we'll be looking at the M7. And then once we've had enough of that, we'll be looking at the MS1 S-Video SVHS. So that should be interesting. I'm not sure whether it's this variant of the M5 or M7 or maybe it's something else. But we'll try and find out, and that's what's coming up. Not sure exactly when, it might be months away. That's us for today, looking at the National or Panasonic NV-M5 VHS video camera.